How does drug use and criminal history affect your chances of becoming a security officer or police officer? That is what we are talking about on today's show. Welcome to the Titan Protection Show.
Quality trained security officers and virtual officers.
I am Ryan Smith here with Josh Leon, and today we are talking about drug use and prior criminal history and how that may or may not affect your chances of becoming a security officer and a police officer. And I think if we talk about those two different things, I think, when you get into police officers, you start talking about polygraph exams and really in-depth background. We are somewhat limited in what we can do, but we look at that stuff certainly, and I think there's not one sort of A plus B equals C in this scenario, and I think my 2 cents on it is, we look at severity of the offense.
Sure.
We look at the pattern. Is it, having a shoplifting when you're 17 years old and you're applying for a job at 25 and nothing in between isn't as serious as maybe 3 shoplifting arrests in the past 2 years, and, you're just now addressing that. So I think that there is, those things can certainly be considered. And lastly, for me, it's honesty. When we list what have you been arrested for, you may have done diversion for something. We still want to know about it and have the conversation, because I think, just coming with here's what it is and here's what I've got in my background is much better than, hey, I have nothing listed on here and then something came up during an investigation. But nobody's angels, and I think you've said it in the past. We're not looking for angels, and I think there's some life experience that goes with that.
And that's stolen. I said that because that's what was said about us.
Right.
That's what our background detective said to us,
Right.
and so we're used to that approach. But I think you already named it. The biggest issue is a pattern.
Right.
And whether you're talking financial missteps, whether you're talking speeding tickets, whether you're talking drug use, alcohol use, jumping from jobs, they're a background detective or a recruiter, I guess on our side of things, on the security side of things, they're looking for a pattern.
Right.
And it's the pattern that you do this, you get a speeding ticket every 6 months. It's going to be hard for you to drive for our company, you wreck a car once a year. It's going to be hard for you to be a cop.
Right.
They have to take those insurance things into consideration along with your behavior. And they're also wanting to see this is where he grew up.
A maturing.
Yeah.
Right.
You're like, okay, he was at Burger King, then he was at McDonald's, then he was at Quick Trip, and then he was this. And now he landed at Titan, and he's been with Titan for 3 years.
Right.
And he stopped the jumping. He's in the same apartment. And so we're going to go ahead and give this guy a look for a PD background check.
Right. Right. And I mean, and the same goes for security, looking at those things. I think the most common tends to be drug use.
Sure.
And I think those are questions that come up,
and one of the things that, let's clear some stuff out of the way when you're talking about security or a police background. Let's clear out some deal breakers. There are still definite deal breakers.
Which are?
I would say if you're a violent human being, if you have a history of violence, and I'm not talking about in self-defense. I'm talking about that you have a battery charge or an assault charge. And I'm not talking about a high school fight. I was
just about to say, so what if I'm, getting or what about the, when you're 21 and you're out hitting the bar scene and everything else, what happens? You get into a bar fight so let me give you that scenario.
Okay.
I'm 21 years old.
Okay.
I got into a bar fight at a bar, got charged with battery. That was 2 years ago. I haven't had anything since, and I come and say, I want to be a security officer for you.
That 2 years is a good thing, man. It just shows. And I would even go, you're probably okay on a PD application.
Right.
I seriously would. When they see it stop, when they see a hard stop to it, that,
Right. Or at very least some time. Like, hey, we
Sure.
don't have a pattern of this behavior, but this one thing happened and we're off the rails. DUIs are another one that come up quite a bit.
It's a tough one. I definitely know law enforcement officers who have had them. Definitely know security officers who've had them. Puts your employer in a very tough trick bag with the insurance, with your driving responsibilities. It's not anything that...
It's almost easier to get hired on with a, certainly a minor in possession or a...
I had that.
Even I had one of those.
I had the
too
minor
when I
in
was high
possession.
school.
Yeah.
And I had that too. I had a minor in possession. I had some marijuana use, some different stuff in high school, but that was my thing. I got a job at 18 as a security officer because I said I want to move on to law enforcement, and that was what really kept me
I was a little
straight
older,
and
but
narrow.
same. Yeah, I was a little older, but same. Let's take me. Okay, so my very first police process was for my dad's agency. He had just finished up, and I wanted to work where my dad worked. And so pretty much, I think I even actually started the paperwork when I was 20, not even 21.
Right.
And that's how bad I wanted to get on the job. And so I made it all the way through. I made it through polygraph, physical agility, all the stuff like that. I made it to the boards. And the last interview before the chief, and in most processes, the chief's kind of formality. The board's already decided. So I made it to the boards, and they called me, and they said, we're going to pass you up. And they said, here's why. And they said, number one, you've done nothing to educate yourself. You've just worked in factories or worked security or whatever. You've done nothing to further your education. Number two, there's not enough time has passed between your last drug use, which was marijuana. And so I got it, and I understood. And he just said, do what you're doing. Stay at, I was at a security job then. He goes, stay there. And come back to us, give us another year. That was in 1996 or 97. So what are we at? Almost 25, 30 years ago.
Right.
And he said the exact same thing. He goes, you need some time.
Right.
We got to get some time away from this and go enroll in a class to show that you're willing to educate yourself, because they're going to spend $100,000 to uniform you, pay you, and educate you to be a cop by the time you're done with FTO.
Right.
And so they're giving you this skill, this trade. You got to spend some money on your own to go do it. It just so happened I got on at another agency during that waiting time.
Right.
And so that was my journey. But that time helps. I mean, that old time heals wounds. It does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is I think it can be, and especially in today's landscape. I mean, when I got hired in 2002, right after 9/11, the height of patriotism, cops and firefighters were heroes and everything else. It was really competitive. And so, I think that is tighter in those times, and I think now we're looking at it and going, I haven't, to be honest with you, had any conversations with any recruiters. I think it'd be interesting to have a recruiter from a PD and kind of give
what
their
they're looking
aspect
for
and go, hey, what? But I'm curious at how that's changed.
Not
and
only
have
what
they
they're
softened that up.
Not only what they're looking for, but what they forgive.
Right.
And because I think that's changed.
Right.
Yeah. We're changing that on a daily basis.
Cocaine use
Yeah.
may have been one that in years past. And actually, I remember when I was going through and they would say...
I know a police officer right now who has prior cocaine use, a couple. Yeah.
Right.
And they're on the job,
Right.
and
But I think they've been able to show, and to your point, they're trying to stress test the candidates so that they can make the best investment out of the pool, who is going to be most likely to return our investment of training, uniform, and everything. Because it takes you a year before you fill a spot on the schedule to where it's not, costing them the worth.
You mentioned something to me leading up to this about that study, that group study they did of abstainers.
That was in college, and actually that was kind of when I was going through a similar thing. I don't think it's atypical that people do dumb stuff in high school, and I was no exception to that rule. But when I was trying to go through and say, okay, now I want to be a police officer and worrying about the background test, one of the things that gave me some peace in that was, it was this study. I was in a psychology class in college, and they studied kids from kindergarten to adulthood, and they tracked their drug usage, and they would go through this, and they, at the end of the study, they segmented it into three groups. You were either an abstainer, where you never tried anything, an abuser, where you abused or were addicted to these things, or experimenters, where you had tried certain things but didn't turn to an abuser status. They found the most mentally healthy was the experimenters, and I think that's to your point about we're not trying to hire angels because we want people with life experience that knows, like when we were in the academy, you had to walk through that room where they were burning weed so that you
I think I looked at the instructor and said, hey, you don't need to do that for me.
Well, and the point they're having...
The Chronic came out my senior year of high school, I think it was. I'm fine. Yeah.
I know.
I know.
But the point of that was so that you could testify that
Absolutely.
if you stopped a car and tossed it, that it was because you knew that there was an odor
And there
of
definitely,
marijuana.
my academy class was 72 guys. There definitely was, or guys and girls, there definitely was folks in there who had never smelled marijuana and smoked it and stuff like that.
And that canned statement of, based on my experience, that's about like
based
the
on my
odor
training
of burnt
experience.
marijuana. Yeah. The experience part
Okay. Do you want to expand on
You want
your
me to
experience,
elaborate?
Officer Leon?
Right. Well, now let's talk about that too, because now we're talking about states where
So
I mean,
weird.
you got recreational
Yeah.
marijuana on the ballot in Missouri. For
Yeah,
November,
I mean,
and-
and listen, if you're coming to me and you put a stud candidate, in front of me, and he or she, was in Colorado last week and they smoked some weed, I'm not shying away from that candidate. I'm just not.
I think it's
I'm
one
gonna
piece
talk
of the
to him.
total picture.
Yes,
right?
I'm going to talk to him about it.
Right.
But honestly, dude, that would be the same logic as not now, but years ago. If somebody went to Vegas and did some gambling and then came back to Kansas where gambling was illegal and we washed them for that, but they were in a state where it's legal, what sense does that make?
Right.
And we're going to have to move forward on the medical side of things the way that we have with alcohol. Yes, you have alcohol in your system. No, you're not impaired. And so
And
we
there's
need
a
to-
responsibility aspect
Yes.
of it, right? I
Yes.
can go home and have a beer and not show up to work the next morning. But is it a problem if, yes, it's legal for me to drink a beer this morning? Is that really the
It's just
smartest
not a good
thing
idea.
to be doing?
Yeah. And I think we're going to have to get into that decision-making process. And also, there's going to have to come some testing. There probably already is. I'm just too dumb to know about it. Where, yes, I have THC in my system. No, I am not impaired.
The PBT
Of weed.
is
Yeah.
should invent
I
that.
see a bag of Doritos. I smell marijuana. I hear the Chronic on your iTunes or on your Spotify or whatever.
Sounds like a duck.
It sounds like a duck, but maybe it's been a few days.
Right. Well, and so let's bring this back because I think we've talked too a lot about the law enforcement side of things, and I really like. I mean, my number one goal is that people get into security and keep it as a career because I think certainly with us it's growing, and there's other aspects of things you can do in security. That there's still a win and a career on the
Or the
security
full
side
circle, or the full circle like we did. We do security, then we moved to law enforcement, then we came back.
Right.
So I mean, there's lots of paths there. Absolutely.
So, and you get into that and you go, okay, when we're talking about security officers, and that's what's missing from this conversation, is there's so many different variables. It comes down to the totality of it. So the advice is be honest about it. Look for some time. If you have an incident, depends on how bad you want it. Because
Sure.
if you just got arrested a year ago for, possession of marijuana or a DUI or something like that, it's probably going to be a not today, similar to your scenario where it's here's what you need to do to kind of go and build that.
And know what you're walking in. If you're walking into a security application process, it's going to be this strenuous. If you're walking into a local municipality police department, it's going to be this strenuous. If you're walking into Secret Service, it's going to be this. They're going to get more
enough.
and more
Yeah.
strenuous. But at the same time, I told one of our, former HR, I went and asked her, I said, am I being old and too set in my ways by requiring somebody to give 2 weeks notice before I hire them back? If they didn't give us 2 weeks notice, things are changing just the
Right.
same way the marijuana thing is changing.
Right.
And I think most municipalities in our area still want a year of abstaining from marijuana, but that used to be a lot longer period of a time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some used to be 3 to 5 and different.
Well, when I applied at 21, my last use was at 18 or 17, and they
Right.
still said you need more time,
more
and that was weed.
yeah, that's probably changed
Yeah,
quite a bit.
I would bet that's shrunk to a year,
Right.
like most, maybe even 6 months.
Right.
And I still, even at the 6-month thing, how do you wash a candidate who said I used marijuana in a state where it was legal? That one just I went on a trip with my friends.
Well, but I don't think that they're looking for that necessarily.
That
'cause
one-off.
when they have, whether it's a polygrapher, whether it's a background investigator, whether it's our hiring manager, they're looking for honesty. They're looking for a story to tell.
Yeah.
Right? And it's, hey, this person came in, he or she was very honest about their background. They've had this much space in between it.
It's the walks like a
This is
duck
the issue.
reversed.
Right.
Yeah.
Into where
pays-
they want to see those things and
Yep.
they want to kind of go through it. And that's the point, is that there's not because this happened to you, it will never, it will bar you from this type of job or something like that. It's
and
more
things
of
are
a-
relative. I mean, you got to remember this. This is me. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's not anybody else. But I look at a kid stealing a pack of smokes or a can of chew or a candy bar or whatever when he's 16. I look at that different than somebody who's handling money and stole it. Maybe
Well, I
I
was
should.
just about to bring that up. That we've got drug stuff and
Okay.
we've got DUIs and that. I think the other one that comes into is the moral crimes. That's like, hey, you are going to take a job with a lot of responsibility.
Yep.
You're going to have, weapons and tools and be able to use force against people.
And the ability to take somebody's freedom away.
Right. And
Yeah.
so that comes into it too, where it's like, forgeries, thefts, those types of things
Yeah.
can really not paint the best picture about your moral character. But, mine too, when I was a kid, I had a minor in possession and I had a dine and ditch from Denny.
You badass.
I was 15. I got arrested by a cop on a bike. From an OP cop rolled up from the bike trail.
How'd that feel?
Oh, it was devastating.
Demoralizing?
Still to this day, it was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
With the
but
goofy little uniform on and everything?
the shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got arrested by a guy in shorts.
It was a female, but yes.
She was in shorts.
She was in
That's-
biker shorts, and it was, yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't a whodunit. It was, you walked out of Denny's, they got your license plate.
I want to congratulate that officer for nabbing Al Capone here next to me, but
Yes. But so to my point of that,
That
so
is
then I
different
flash
to me
forward
than-
to when I'm 22 and I'm that's a theft crime, but it's not, so that's a piece too where it's like how much time, and it's a different story when you're a 15-year-old kid than you are a 25-year-old that's
Exactly.
stealing stuff. But let me give you a couple scenarios.
okay.
Somebody that got arrested for minor theft, say it's shoplifting,
Okay.
twice within a year when they were 24.
Oof.
Now they're 32, and they haven't had any incidents since.
Yeah, you're probably gonna give them a look. That with that span of time, the fact that they were still stealing at 24 and hadn't
Right.
evolved yet, that causes me some concern. It's got my spidey senses
So
tingling.
what's your threshold there? What if it was 2 years?
So 24 to 26.
I did, the two shopliftings occurred at age 24. They're applying at 26 for a security position with us.
That's a tough one, dude. I mean, we're in a tough job market right now in staffing, and sometimes we have to, take some gambles and things like that. And
Yes.
that's a tough one.
And that's a feel one, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where you have to look at
Yeah.
what other candidates
What-
are available. If you have the choice between that person and somebody that doesn't have that on their, that may be a better bet. Because,
Sure.
that's what we're all doing. We're placing a bet on these candidates and hopefully, making the right decisions. But we have that responsibility for our clients as well. I always think about that. That for me, those questions always come down to, would I be willing to go to a client and say, this person had these two things happen, but here's why I think they're worth it, and we're going. And for me, I think the interview is crucial because it's finding out what they're doing and maybe asking that person, why would I take this risk on you with these two? How do I?
I'm picturing my favorite clients, whether it's Hugh or Christy or Jerry, dozens of clients who Bill, all those folks, and I'm sitting here running through my head the conversation.
Right.
Because what they're saying is, Josh, what did you know about this kid before you sent him to me? And I'm sitting there, and there might be a part of us that, hey, they had 2 years, they kept their nose clean, and I had a good gut feeling about the kid. I might have to answer it that way,
Right.
dude. I mean,
Right.
it just might be that's the way that I have to answer it. And then I would have to walk them through this conversation we're having here. It's so gray area because you have two guys who you got arrested for battery and I got arrested for battery. Yours was mutual combatants and they end up pleading it down to disorderly conduct because you were in a fight at a bar and you were defending yourself. Mine was a gang initiation and I went up and hit a pedestrian walking by without cause. Those are both batteries. Maybe yours got played, but that's two different things in my book.
Well, that's where I was going with that one is I think the interview and what their answer to that is answers the question for them. So in my scenario, if that same case of the person that stole two things and I was talking to the client, I'd say, hey, this person had these two incidences, but when I talked to them, their story was, I was a dumb kid, I was going down a bad path. Then all of a sudden I fell in love with this girl. She got pregnant. I had a kid. It changed my life. And now I'm trying to figure out
that
how
was
to
me.
go through
Yeah.
it. That's a story that you can tell and go, okay, we're going to keep an eye on things, or maybe we don't throw them right into an armed high-level position. Maybe we, crawl, walk, run type of thing. But that's very different than somebody that's just going, I don't, I just.
It's when you never find the on switch.
want the job.
It's when you never find the light switch. I was in a vehicle with two guys who ended up doing really, really hard time. One's still in. and the other two guys are serious drug problems. And the only thing that made me get out of the car with those guys was knowing that I had a son coming. And so that light switch hits, and so you're looking for that light switch. Is when you don't see the light switch of maturity kind of hit, and that's scary. But
the answer can't be, well, he seems like a nice guy.
He seems like a nice guy. Yeah.
He'll
swim.
Kick, buddy. Well, to wrap it up, and let's do. I wanted to give you one more scenario, and I've thrown this at you before, but I think it's an interesting one because it paints the picture of time and how things can be looked at on paper. But I am 21 years old.
All right.
I'm coming to apply for an armed job. I got arrested at 17 for a minor in possession. I got arrested when I was 16 because my girlfriend at the time, we were in the same grade. I was 16, she was 15. Her dad caught us, and I got charged with indecent liberties with a child. I am now a registered sex offender. But those two things, other than that, I got good grades. I'm just wrapping up college, and I really want to go into law enforcement. I want this job as a security officer.
There's an old detective's trick that I stole from my old man, and what it is you see something on paper, you see the indecent liberties, you see the battery, you see the drug use, and it says, I know what the story is with this, what this says. This is your opportunity to tell me what your side of it is.
Right.
And detectives will do it when they have all the evidence, they have all the facts, and they'll say, hey, and they'll do it to solicit a confession, and they'll say, this is your chance to put your spin on it, and this is your chance to tell you why you killed this person. You still killed somebody, and you're probably going to prison for murder.
Right.
But it's giving them that chance of what degree is it? Did I think about it? Did I leave? So anyways, you can do the same thing with a candidate. And what I would do if this guy had really, his last offense, according to you, would be about 17. So if he's armed for me, that's 4 years later. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's 4 years later. I probably would ask him the questions and to tell me the story. And if he's got 4 years of, good behavior and he gives me all the background on this stuff, and I have a good confidence that his story is legit, I'd probably give him a shot. Yeah.
And I'm now the client, and you're meeting with me and you're going, hey, Dave is coming on board. And I go, really? Tell me about Dave's background. And at some point I say, does he have any criminal history?
My first answer to that, yeah, he's had some stumbles, but I've been real happy about. I've been real happy on his progress towards maturity and adulthood. Yeah, he had some stumbles when he was a younger man.
What were those stumbles?
It's probably not at liberty for me to say, but that it was enough that caught my eye for a second. But what caught my eye even more was the road he has towed going forward.
Well, that piqued my interest. So I searched a little bit, and I found out he's a registered sex offender in the state of Kansas.
He is.
I can't have that at my facility. But how am I going to tell my boss I've got a registered sex offender here working security at my site? I mean,
could I get your grace to have Dave come tell you the story? Because I would not want to tell his story for him. So I think what I would want to do is when you heard the story, I think you would have some good peace of mind.
And I think that's fair. And I think
that's probably what I do
too is maybe get with the applicant and go, clients are going to have some questions. How do you feel about me sharing this story? Because I think that person would go, please, because if you just see registered sex offender, that's a very different scenario than going, I was a 16-year-old kid. I had sex with my girlfriend who was 15 at the time. We were both sophomores in high school. Like, I'm not sitting there looking going, she's 15. That's illegal. Like, I don't think that cross. Anyway, that's a curveball, and obviously one that
we just went through it this
often,
week. We just went through it this week where we had, it was reversed, where I pulled an officer because of some bad behavior, and it pissed that client off. And the thing was is what all I could, but it's an internal investigation, and it's a human resources issue, and there's some confidentiality pieces at work there. And what I told the clients is, you got to trust me on this one.
Trust that we have your best interest.
We got your best interest at heart, And,
well, because that can happen too. Sometimes
it backfires.
Well, but sometimes employees or officers that are assigned to a post can do a really great job, and they are liked by our point of contact, and that can sometimes give them a sense of I can do whatever I want.
They nuzzle in, they kind of burrow.
But the times that I've come up against that, when we've gone to a client and said, "Hey, this person feels like they can do whatever they want to because they are in your good graces," I can't think of any time where anybody's pushed back and said, no, you don't discipline them for breaking your rules because I like them.
I'll go you one further. I actually had client kind of a headache client look at me and say, Josh, my relationship is with you and Titan, not a single officer. And which I was impressed to hell, you know, because it is.
That's ultimately the value they get out of contract security is that's our headache, right?
Yes.
So,
but the other thing, but you say it all the time, your responsibility and my responsibility and an administrator's responsibility here is not to a single officer, it's to the entire 400 officers. And so, you know, bringing it back around full circle, my responsibility is to, if I'm hiring Dave, who had the, you know, the indecent liberties charge back then, am I making a quality decision for the organization and our client as a whole?
Which I think is a
great...
great...
Even if Dave's got a great story.
I think it's a great synopsis to wrap it up, because kind of that's the... I wish we could go through this and go, if you had this on your background, it's a no or it's a yes.
We're happy to answer that stuff. Just send us a comment on it.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody's got any specifics out there of like, hey, I've got this or I'm wondering about this, feel free to shoot us an email or a comment.
And also,
we're happy to answer it.
Please know that our requirements might be different than another security company's requirements.
And that's different from department to department.
Absolutely.
But I think the honesty piece of just be open and honest with what's back there, because what you don't want to have happen is you don't list it and it comes up, then you look dishonest. And I think that can be a bigger deal breaker than the offense itself.
Absolutely.
So I think just
be honest to a fault.
Candid, just absolutely honest. I think time between whatever the incident is and when you're applying is crucial, and then I think patterns of behavior is everything. So like if it's, you know, hey, maybe I only had one shoplifting arrest, but I got arrested, you know, 3 other times for various things, there's still a pattern of, you know, getting
bad
in
behavior.
trouble. So that's my advice. Any other thoughts or ideas before we wrap it up?
Sometimes it's best just to go be really, really brutally honest and give the job that you want a shot. Go swing the bat and see what they say and ask for the feedback.
I can't agree more. I think that's a good piece of advice too, is even if you don't get the job, it may set you on the path. I had the same experience. Yeah. I had the same. I went through, you know, and applied for a couple departments. And I think that's crucial for anybody that's on the other side of this, that's hiring police officers and security officers, is don't be a dick and give some positive feedback of, hey, go get some time, some space, go work security, go do this type of thing and come back, because that too shows you're really invested in it. And if it's, hey, I didn't get this last year, but I came back again and here's what I've done differently, makes yourself an even better candidate.
I'll echo this, and then we can wrap it up. I'm doing a supervisor process right now, and I just saw one of the officers who wants to be interviewed for it has an interview on the books from last July, from just a few months ago, from July, and the other candidates who were in that interview process said, nah, I'll let my last interview stick for itself. He's the one officer who said, no, I want another shot at it. I want another shot at an interview. And I could not be more impressed.
Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, appreciate it. If anybody has any thoughts or specific scenarios, we are happy to address those or answer those. But that's our take on criminal history and drug use.
And if anybody would like to leave comments about our president's jacket, that would be fantastic.
Well, I would like to note that we are both going to the same event where the jacket is required, but yet,
Maybe I'm like Batman and I'll change into it here in a minute.
Right on. Appreciate it.
We'll
see you next time.